The night started with blood on white tile. Derek stood in the corridor of a Portland hospital, boots streaked red, staring through a glass panel at a small body on a metal table. On the other side, bright lights burned down on Nico while a team of doctors leaned over him, hands moving fast, voices sharp and tight. At his side, Lily gripped her father's hand so hard his fingers went numb. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, is he going to die because of me?" Outside that glass, the world had already chosen its story. News crews were calling Derek a brave, devoted father. Reporters were talking about sacrifice, courage, and fate. None of them saw the form sitting on the chair beside him, where the line for parent or guardian under Nico's name was left empty. Derek knew the truth those cameras would never show. The boy bleeding out in that room was a ghost on paper. No address. No emergency contact. No one to claim him if things went bad. A nurse named Harper stepped close, the soft rustle of her scrubs cutting through the noise of the floor. She took Derek's wrist, steady but gentle, guiding his hand toward the stack of consent forms. Her finger traced where he needed to sign so the doctors could try one more risky step. Her skin was warm against his cold fingers. "Breathe," she said quietly. "He needs you calm." Her voice dropped low, meant only for him, and for a strange second it felt like the rest of the hall faded. Just her breath on his cheek, Lily's grip on his arm, and the sound of his own heart pounding. Down the hall, two officers spoke in low tones, not low enough. One of them said, "If the kid pulls through, he'll just go back into the system." Lily's head snapped up. The words hit harder than any headline. Her eyes filled fast. She turned to her father, chest shaking. "You can't let them send him away," she cried. "He took those bullets for me. Please, Dad. Don't let him disappear. Let me ask you something right here. If a stranger's child stepped in front of a gun for yours, what would you do? Would you sign the forms, open your door, risk your peace? Or would you send a check, say thank you, and move on?" Drop your honest answer in the comments, because this is where a lot of people look away. But Derek could not. The doors to the operating room swung open. A surgeon stepped out, mask pulled down, eyes heavy. He looked at Derek, then at Lily, then at the empty line on the form. "We've done all we can for now," he said. "If he lives through the night, he's going to need more than medicine." He held Derek's gaze. "Are you prepared to take responsibility for this child's life, not just his hero moment?" A week earlier, Derek stood in a very different room. Chrome shone under bright shop lights, custom bikes lined up in a perfect row, and a TV crew fussed with cameras around him. Portland loved the story of the self-made man, the kid who started with one busted bike and turned it into a company worth millions. Derek smiled when the red light on the camera came on, but it never reached his eyes. He talked about hard work, vision, and growth. When a reporter gently asked about his late wife, he slid past the question with practiced ease. That part of his life stayed locked away. Across town, in a back street behind a diner, Nico shared a cold order of fries with another teen. They sat on milk crates near the trash cans, steam from the kitchen vents drifting over them. They joked about whose fries were smaller, whose shoes had more holes, which cops were likely to hassle them that night. They laughed loud, because laughter was cheaper than fear. When the wind picked up, both boys pulled their thin jackets tighter, pretending they did not notice the chill digging into their bones. Later that day, at a red light, Derek felt eyes on him. He glanced to the sidewalk and saw a small kid standing close to the curb, wiping bugs off the front of his bike with the sleeve of his hoodie. The kid's hair was messy, his jeans too short, but his touch on the metal was careful, almost tender. Their eyes met for a brief second. Derek saw hunger there, but not just for food. Hunger for something steady. Something that did not vanish overnight. That evening, back at his loft, a family friend named Tessa adjusted his collar in front of the mirror. "You're going," she insisted, talking about the community charity event for kids. Lily needs to see you around real people, not just engines and staff. She stood close, her hand smoothing his shirt, her perfume light but present. There was a grown-up pull there, the kind that could lead somewhere if he let it. He stepped away, mumbling that he was fine, that he only had space for work and his daughter. The truth was, it was easier to manage machines than feelings. Still, he agreed to take Lily to the event. As he swung his leg over the bike and hit the starter, engine rumbling, he did not see the small figure in the alley near the shop. Nico watched from the shadows, arms crossed against his chest, eyes locked on the man with the expensive helmet and the little girl climbing on behind him. One thought burned through Nico's mind: if he could ever get close to people like that, maybe his whole story would not have to end behind a diner. The community center buzzed with life. Colored lights hung from the ceiling, kids ran between rows of parked bikes, and music pulsed through old speakers. Derek rolled his custom ride inside, trying to act like this was no big deal, like he did not notice the way other parents watched him. Lily hopped off the back, helmet too big for her head, and darted toward a group of kids giggling near a face paint table. Riders lined up their bikes, letting neighborhood kids sit on them, rev the engines, feel important for a few seconds. Derek leaned against his bike, doing his best version of cool dad. He crossed his arms, smiled when Lily waved, and laughed when one of the club members pretended to knight a toddler with a toy wrench. In truth, he felt out of place. He knew how to move in boardrooms and on shop floors, but throwing himself into a room full of strangers with his daughter exposed every quiet fear he carried about not being enough for her. Outside, Nico stood just beyond the open doors, where warm air from the center met the damp chill of the Portland night. The smell of pizza hit him first. Then the sound of kids shouting in joy. He tugged at the hem of his hoodie, suddenly aware of how he smelled, how his shoes were worn thin. He told himself he was only stopping to rest, but Lily's laughter kept pulling him closer. He edged forward inch by inch, staying near the wall, trying not to draw the eye of staff or security. Inside, Tessa slipped a hand through Derek's arm. "Smile," she said, lifting her phone. She pressed in close for a selfie, her cheek nearly touching his. Lily glanced over, rolled her eyes dramatically, and called out, "Dad's popular tonight." The adults laughed, but there was a strange, charged energy in the air that Derek could feel. Part of him liked the attention, part of him wanted to step back and focus only on the small girl weaving through the crowd. Out near the curb, a dark car rolled past the center slower than the rest of traffic. Nico noticed it at once. Life on the streets had trained his gut to spot danger before anyone else. Windows too dark. Speed too low. The way the car paused at the corner, then circled back. His chest tightened. He scanned for exits, for cover, for who might get hurt first. The car pulled up again. A door opened. A figure in dark clothes stepped out, face covered, arm extended. The gun caught the light for a split second. The barrel pointed straight at Lily. In that instant, Nico did not think about himself. His heart slammed once. One thought cut through the noise. Not her. He pushed off the wall and sprinted toward the girl he had never met. The first shot tore through the night like a firecracker that went wrong. Nico felt the impact in his side before he heard the sound. Heat seared through his ribs, knocking the air out of his lungs. His feet slipped, but his eyes stayed locked on Lily. She froze like a deer in headlights, hands half raised, mouth open in a scream that had not yet found its way out. Nico forced his legs to move. Each step was thick, like running through mud. The second shot hit his shoulder as he slammed into Lily, shoving her behind the nearest bike. Pain exploded down his arm, white and sharp. He tasted metal in his mouth. Still, he spread himself wide in front of her, arms out like a human shield. The third bullet tore into his leg, throwing him down hard onto the concrete. His knee hit first, then his cheek. The world spun, sirens in his ears that were not yet real. From across the room, Derek watched his little girl vanish behind a parked bike and a small, falling body. For a heart-stopping second, he thought Lily had gone down. Then he saw a boy in a torn hoodie sprawled out, blood soaking the ground. Guilt slammed into him like a physical blow. He should have been closer. He should have seen the car. He should have done something. His body finally reacted, legs pumping as he charged forward, shouting her name. Members of the riding club lunged toward the shooter. Someone knocked the gun from his hand. Another pinned him down. People screamed. Kids cried. Lily crawled out from behind the bike and dropped to her knees by Nico's side. Her small hands pressed against the hole in his side without knowing how, just trying to stop the red from spreading. "Stay with me," she sobbed. "Please. Please." Later, in the back of an ambulance, Nico lay strapped to a gurney, skin pale, lips cracked. A woman in scrubs leaned over him, ponytail tight, eyes sharp. Harper pressed her palm to his chest, fingers near his throat, keeping him grounded. "Stay awake, kid," she said, her voice calm and deep. "Look at me." She brushed sweat from his forehead with a touch that felt almost tender. In the chaos of sirens and shouting, her face was the one still point, her hand a warm anchor on his skin. Out on the street, an officer spoke into a radio, voice shaking as he said the shooter had yelled Derek's name while firing. This was not random. Lily was not just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She had been the target. Inside the ambulance, Lily held on to Nico's fingers until the last possible second. As they neared the hospital, his hand slipped from hers. The heart monitor gave a long, flat sound that made her scream his name. For one terrible moment, it looked like the boy who stepped in front of a gun for her had already given more than his small body could offer. The family consultation room felt too quiet after the chaos of the ambulance. Derek sat at a small table, hands still stained, dried blood flaking off his skin every time he moved his fingers. A stack of forms lay in front of him. A social worker with tired eyes slid one page closer. "We need to know who can make decisions for him," she said. "Parent, guardian, anyone legally tied to him." Under Nico's name, the line was blank. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Years earlier, in another hospital, Derek had held a pen just like this as a doctor told him that his wife's brain injury was not going to get better. He had signed a DNR while staring at a heart monitor he could not stop. Back then, the choice had broken something inside him. Now he sat in front of another form, another child, another life that could be shaped or lost depending on a few lines of ink. He lifted his hand and saw more than just Nico's blood. He saw that old night again. Crushed metal. Headlights in his face. A phone call that came too late. He squeezed his eyes shut, but it did not stop the memory. It only made the sounds louder in his head. Tires. Sirens. A flat, endless tone. The door opened, and Harper stepped in, carrying a small tray with gauze and a bowl. "You're still bleeding," she said quietly. It was not a question. She sat across from him, no clipboard, no laptop, just cotton pads and warm water. She took his hand, turning it palm up. The warmth of her touch cut through his numbness. She dipped the gauze, then slowly wiped away the dried red stains from his knuckles, one careful stroke at a time. They were close enough that he could feel her breath when she leaned in. "You did everything you could out there," she said. It felt too kind and too personal, all at once. Out in the hall, voices drifted in through the thin door. A detective was talking to the social worker. "With no guardian on file, he'll fall under state procedures once he's stable," he said. The words were dry and cold. "We'll do what we can, but you know how full the system already is." Lily, sitting on a chair by the doorway, heard every word. Her feet did not quite reach the floor. Her hands curled into fists. She pushed the door open and stepped inside, eyes red and wide. "Dad," she said, voice shaking, "they're going to take him away, aren't they?" Derek started to answer, but she cut him off, tears spilling over. He bled all over the street for me. If you don't claim him, who will? Let that sink in. Do you think a kid's value should depend on whether there is a name on a line that says, family? Or should what he did that night mean more than any missing paperwork? Tell me in the comments what you think Derek should do, because the next choice he makes will change all of their lives. By morning, the waiting room looked less like a hospital and more like a clubhouse. Leather vests draped over chairs, heavy boots lined the wall, and the smell of strong coffee covered the sharp scent of cleaners. Riders from the club had taken over every corner, dropping off donuts at the nurse's station and blankets on empty chairs. People who were usually judged on sight for the way they dressed were now the ones bringing comfort to a scared little girl and her worn-out father. Lily sat between two big riders, holding a styrofoam cup of hot chocolate in both hands. One of them, a broad man with gray in his beard named Hank, leaned forward to talk to Derek. "You know that kid's not new," Hank said. "He's been watching our bikes for weeks. Stands in that alley behind the diner, right on the edge of the light. Never asks for anything. Just stares at the chrome like it's the only good thing in his day." Something twisted in Derek's chest. He pictured the small figure at the curb, the one he had noticed for half a second at the red light. Harper stepped into the room with fresh updates, and Derek's eyes flicked from her to Hank, caught between the world of polished care and the world of rough loyalty. Harper stood close when she spoke, her hand brushing his forearm as she reassured Lily that Nico was still fighting. A moment later, Tessa appeared in the doorway, saw how near Harper was, and hesitated before crossing the room. Tessa moved behind Derek and wrapped her arms around his shoulders in a tight hug, her cheek against his hair. "I came as soon as I saw the news," she said. Her gaze slid to Harper, and in that brief pause, there was a quiet tension that had nothing to do with medicine or law. Two women from two different parts of his life, both pulled into this story by the same bleeding boy. When the talk turned to what would happen next, Hank lowered his voice. "If the system won't treat him right," he said, "we have ways to keep him from getting lost. We look out for our own." His words carried weight. Unspoken promises. Unspoken risks. Derek felt his stomach tighten. Money, law, and street loyalty were about to collide, and Nico was in the middle. By mid-afternoon, Derek's lawyer was texting him about liability. His PR team wanted a statement that showed compassion but no long-term commitment. Lily wanted one thing only, Nico safe and close. Every person in his orbit had a different opinion about what he owed this boy. The social worker walked back in with a folder pressed to her chest. Her tone was formal, but her eyes were tired. "Mr. Cole," she said, "if no legal guardian is in place by the end of the week, policy requires that Nico be moved into state custody once he's stable enough to transfer." The room went silent. The countdown had begun. By the next day, Derek's face was all over local news. Clips played on repeat, the wealthy bike builder whose only child barely escaped a targeted attack. Commentators praised the unknown boy who stepped in front of the gun. Talk shows called Nico a street angel. None of them mentioned that the angel had no safe place to land when the cameras turned off. In a side office near the waiting room, Derek watched a live segment on his phone while his lawyer spoke in low, urgent tones. "You need to be careful," the lawyer said. "If you take this kid in and something goes wrong, you're responsible. Legally. Financially. Publicly. You've built a brand on control and second chances for yourself. Bringing in a minor from the streets is a huge risk." Derek stared at the screen. His own smile looked fake back at him. He thought about the factory accident that had pushed a desperate man over the edge, the one his lawyer had already warned him not to mention in any interview. The shooter had been hurt on Derek's watch, then cut loose when costs got too high. The choice to protect profits had planted the seed for this night. It made the idea of walking away from Nico feel like repeating the same mistake all over again. Out in the stairwell, Tessa cornered him during a quiet moment. She placed her hand flat on his chest, feeling the rapid beat under his shirt. "Listen," she said, eyes locked on his. "We can fix this. Make a donation in the kid's name, fund some program, do the right thing on paper. Let me manage the story. Let me take care of you." Her thumb moved in a slow circle over his shirt, and for a heartbeat, it felt good to lean into someone else's certainty. Then he heard Lily's voice from the top of the stairs. "Fix what?" she asked. She had tear tracks on her cheeks and a fierce set to her jaw. "You can't just fix this with money, Dad. If he goes back out there, that's on us. I don't care about your business if it means he sleeps on the ground again. So let's pause here. If you were in Derek's position, would you protect your name and walk away, or risk everything to bring one kid into your world for real? Is that duty, love, or just guilt? Tell me in the comments what you think this responsibility really is." Before Derek could answer his daughter, Harper appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Her voice was soft but steady. "Derek," she said. Nico woke up. She met his eyes and added, "He asked for you. Not us." Those words landed like a verdict he could not appeal. The recovery room was dim and quiet, machines giving off soft beeps and steady lines of green. Nico lay propped up slightly, skin pale against the white pillow. Bandages wrapped his chest and shoulder. His leg was braced. When his eyes fluttered open, he squinted at the ceiling, confused by the strange stillness. Hospitals always meant bad news in his world. He turned his head and saw two faces he did not expect. Derek sat in a chair pulled right up to the bed, elbows on his knees, eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. Next to him stood Lily, fingers twisted together, lower lip caught between her teeth. For a second, Nico wondered if he was dreaming. Then pain flared through his side, sharp and real. "I'm sorry," Nico croaked. The words scraped his throat. "I didn't mean to make a mess. I saw the gun. I didn't want her to get hit." He nodded slightly toward Lily. The apology made Derek's chest hurt. This kid lying there wired to machines was saying sorry for bleeding on the floor. Harper moved closer, checking the monitors, adjusting a line. When Nico tried to lift his hand toward the bandage, she slid her fingers over his and gently pressed his arm back down. "Easy," she said, voice low and warm. "You already did the hard part." Her hand stayed on his for a few extra seconds, her thumb brushing his knuckles in a small, steady rhythm. Derek watched that simple touch, and something in him tightened. It was strange how one nurse's care for a kid she had just met could feel more real than half the polished dinners he had been to in the last year. Nico looked from Harper to Derek. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Soon as I can walk, I'm out, right? Shelter. Street. Whatever they pick." He tried to sound casual, like this was all just routine. Lily's eyes filled again. To him, being moved like luggage from one cold place to another was normal life. Derek leaned forward. "No," he said, the word coming out rough. "This time is different. I won't let you be alone again." The promise surprised even him as it left his mouth. Saying it out loud turned it from a kind thought into a commitment he would have to live with. As Derek stepped out later to take a call, Nico heard two nurses talking near the door. "Once he's stable, they'll sort out state placement," one said. "Beds are tight, but they'll find somewhere." Nico's heart stuttered. The monitor beside him picked up the jump in his pulse, the faster pace of his breaths. He stared at the ceiling and whispered into the empty air, "I knew it. It's always temporary." A few days later, Derek sat in a conference room at his own shop, hands folded tight while two detectives went over their notes. On the wall behind him, framed photos showed happy customers and big charity rides. None of those pictures included the man now lying in a jail cell down the road. "The shooter was one of your former line workers," one detective said. "Injured on site last year. Lost partial movement in his hand. Workers' compensation ran out. After that, things went downhill." He glanced at his partner, then back at Derek. He blamed you for cutting corners, for not fixing equipment when he complained. Said you chose profit over safety. Each word landed like a hammer. Derek remembered the email threads his managers had flagged. Costs. Delays. Repairs that would slow production. He had skimmed them, trusted others to handle it, signed off on what looked best for the company. Now a man with nothing left to lose had aimed his rage at the person Derek loved most. When the detectives left, the shop felt different. The noise of tools and engines on the floor sounded far away. An employee named Raina stepped into the office, holding a laptop. "I heard," she said quietly. "I found those old reports if you want to see them." Her hair was pulled back, sleeves rolled up, grease still on her fingers. She sat beside him at the small desk, close enough that their shoulders brushed as they leaned over the screen. They pored over message after message. Requests for maintenance. Notes about worn parts. Warnings about production pressure. The air between them grew heavy, not from attraction alone but from the shared weight of what they were reading. Raina reached out once to scroll, her hand sliding past his on the trackpad, their fingers touching briefly. It was a warm, steady contact in a moment filled with cold facts. "Did I really choose this?" Derek asked, almost to himself. "Did I choose this path that led to that man standing in front of my daughter with a gun?" Raina did not offer easy comfort. "You chose what you thought kept the machine running," she said. "You didn't ask who got crushed under it. So here's a tough question. Do you think one person's mistake, even one made for business reasons, can ever be balanced just by writing checks later? Or does real repair mean letting that mistake change how you live from that point on? Tell me what you think in the comments." Hours later, the shop was quiet. Derek sat alone with the glow of the laptop on his face. Beside it lay a new stack of papers his lawyer had dropped off, information on foster to adopt, guardianship, home studies. His eyes moved from the reports about ignored warnings to the forms that could make Nico legally his. He realized that signing those might be the first step toward making something right that money alone never could. Back at the hospital, Nico's room had changed. There were drawings taped to the wall now, most of them by Lily, bikes with wings, stick figures holding hands, a little key in the corner of one sketch. A stuffed bear sat near Nico's feet. His color was better, but pain still creased his face when he shifted. Derek pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, not as the man who got interviewed on TV, but as a father who owed answers. This time, he did not start with another thank you. "I need to know about you," he said. "Where did you sleep before this? Who was looking out for you?" Nico hesitated, then shrugged with the shoulder that did not hurt. "Here and there," he said. "Shelter when they have space. Bus stations when they don't. I had a friend behind the diner. We watched each other's stuff. Mostly, you keep moving so nobody gets too used to you being around." His voice was flat, as if he were listing normal chores, not survival tactics. "I hide my backpack when I shower so it doesn't walk off. I keep my shoes under my head when I sleep. That kind of thing." Derek listened, throat tight. "If you could have anything normal," he asked, "what would it be?" Nico took a long breath. "A door I can lock from the inside," he said. "A bed that's just mine. A closet with my stuff hanging in it, not crammed in a bag. A place where if I don't show up one night, somebody notices." Harper stepped in with a chart, then paused. "I'll give you two a minute," she said. As she passed Derek, her hand brushed his shoulder, a small, lingering touch that sent a shiver up his spine. Her eyes met his for a brief, loaded second, as if to say, "You know what you have to do." He turned back to Nico. "I want you to come home with us," Derek said. "Not as some mascot for a news story. As part of our family. It won't be perfect. I'll make mistakes. But I'm asking you to let me try." Nico frowned. "What happens when you get tired of me?" he asked. When I mess up. When I'm not a hero anymore, just some kid who leaves socks on the floor. Before Derek could answer, Lily burst in, hair a mess, cheeks flushed. If you come home with us, you can have my room, she said. I mean, we can share until you feel safe alone. I'll even let you pick the night light. Her attempt at a joke landed with unexpected weight. She was offering the one thing she had never shared with anyone since her mother died, her personal space. Nico swallowed hard. His hand shook as he reached for the pen on the clipboard, ready to sign the temporary placement papers. This was more commitment than anyone had ever asked from him. More promise than he had ever been offered. Just as the pen touched the paper, the door opened. A man in a worn jacket stepped inside, carrying a folder. He looked at Nico with narrowed eyes and then at Derek. I'm family, he said. From California. I'm here to take the boy home. The man in the doorway smelled like old smoke and cheap gas. His jacket was frayed at the cuffs, and his eyes went straight to the chart at the foot of Nico's bed before they even landed on the boy himself. Name's Carl, he said. I'm his uncle. From California. I'm here to bring him back where he belongs. His voice tried to sound calm, but there was a sharp edge under every word. Nico's whole body went tight. It was not the pain from his wounds that made his breath stutter. It was recognition. His fingers dug into the blanket. He did not say, "Uncle." He did not say anything at first. Lily moved closer to the bed, like she could shield him from the man's stare just by standing there. The social worker stepped in behind Carl, folder in hand. He has some documents, she said carefully. Old school records, a note from a neighbor. We have to look at any blood relative who steps forward. It was policy, and she could not pretend otherwise, even if her face showed she did not like the timing. Derek rose from his chair, placing himself between Carl and the bed. Harper came to stand at his shoulder without being asked, her presence a quiet line of support at his side. For a moment, the four adults stood facing each other, the air in the room tight. Derek could feel Harper's arm brushes as they shifted, that small contact reminding him he was not the only one ready to stand in front of this child. Carl's gaze finally moved to Nico. You remember me, he said. Your mom's brother. You know I'm family. The word family sounded more like a threat than a promise. Nico's lips parted, but no greeting came out. Instead, his eyes jumped to Derek, wide and scared. Nico swallowed, throat dry. Please, he whispered, looking straight at Derek now, not at the man who claimed him. Don't let him take me. Carl's mouth twitched into a small, knowing smile. I'll be back with a lawyer, he said, turning toward the door. We'll see what the court says about who this boy really belongs to. The emergency hearing took place in a small courtroom with worn benches and flickering lights. It did not look like the kind of room where lives could be reshaped with a few words, but that was exactly what was about to happen. Nico sat at a table beside the social worker, feet barely reaching the floor, hospital bracelet still on his wrist. Derek sat at the other side with his attorney. Harper took a seat in the row behind him, close enough that he could feel her presence like a hand on his back. Carl arrived in a wrinkled shirt, his own lawyer at his side. He spoke of keeping family together, of promises he claimed he had made to Nico's mother. On paper, it sounded noble. In Nico's eyes, it did not. When it was his turn to speak, Nico's voice shook. He told the judge about nights locked outside because there was no room for him inside. About cupboards with nothing but dust. About how Carl disappeared until checks or help from the state showed up, and then, like magic, he would reappear with open hands. He did not cry while he talked. That almost made it worse. His numb tone said this was not some rare hardship, but the steady rhythm of his life. As Nico's words caught for the first time, Harper leaned forward and placed her hand on Derek's shoulder. The simple touch steadied him. Without looking back, he laid his own hand over hers. It was a quiet signal, we are in this together. The judge noticed the small gesture, even if no one spoke about it. Carl's lawyer tried to flip the story. He painted Derek as a rich man driven by guilt, a boss whose factory decisions had hurt workers and whose public image just happened to need a new, good deed after the shooting. Taking in this boy would look very generous on the news, he said. How do we know this isn't about fixing his brand? When Derek took the stand, he did not dodge that part. He admitted the factory accident haunted him. He admitted he had pushed off hard choices in the past and people got hurt. His voice cracked once when he talked about the gun pointed at Lily and the small body that stepped in front of her. Maybe I should have done better before, he said, eyes on the judge. But I'm not asking to take Nico in to fix a headline. I'm asking because my daughter cannot sleep unless she knows he's safe. Because I can't walk away from the boy who did what I should have done. Because I already love him. The judge listened, face unreadable. At the end of the hearing, she folded her hands. I will review the testimony and documents, she said. You will have my decision in the morning. With that, she rose, leaving hope and fear hanging in the air like a coin spinning on its edge. That night, the hospital room felt both crowded and strangely warm. Derek had convinced staff to let Nico stay there while they waited for the ruling, instead of moving him to a different floor. Lily sprawled on the small couch with a takeout carton balanced on her knees. Nico picked at his own food, stomach unsure whether to trust it, but grateful for every bite. For the first time, their talk did not center on bullets or court. Lily told embarrassing stories about her dad burning pancakes and once getting locked out of their own loft in his socks. Nico laughed, then clapped a hand to his side when it pulled on his stitches. It was a raw, surprised sound, like he did not quite believe joy was allowed here. Derek watched them trade jokes and eye rolls, feeling something settle in his chest that did not have a name yet. This was not a news story. It was two kids arguing over who got the last fry. Later, when the room grew quieter, Harper stepped in at the end of her shift. Her hair had slipped loose from its ponytail, a few strands falling around her face. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, taking in the sight of Derek sitting on the edge of Nico's bed, Lily curled at the foot with a blanket. You look like a family already, she said softly. After checking Nico's vitals and straightening his blankets, she walked with Derek into the hall. The fluorescent light did his tired features no favors, but up close she saw the steady set of his jaw. Are you scared? She asked. He let out a rough laugh. Terrified, he admitted. Of messing this up. Of not being enough. Of loving another person so much and watching the world try to take him away. Their eyes held for a long moment. The warmth between them was clear now, no longer something either of them could pretend not to feel. Yet neither moved in closer. The timing was wrong, and both of them knew it. Love here, if it came, would have to grow alongside the hard work of building a home for two kids who had already lost more than most adults ever would. Let me ask you this, do you think people who have made serious mistakes deserve another chance to be trusted with someone's life? Or should their past always be the thing that decides their future? Drop your thoughts below, because judges sign orders, but we all carry secret verdicts inside us too. As Harper turned to go, Derek reached out. If this goes our way, he said, voice low, I'm going to need help. Not just with paperwork. With all of this. With him. With her. With me. She smiled, small and sure. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Just then, his phone buzzed on the table behind him, screen lighting up with a notification from his attorney, the judge has filed her decision. The courtroom felt even smaller the next morning. Rain tapped against the high windows as everyone took their seats. Nico sat straighter this time, hands folded, Lily beside him like a tiny guard. Derek and Carl faced the front, waiting for the judge to speak words that would decide where one boy slept for the next stretch of his life. The judge reviewed the file one more time, then lifted her eyes. This is not a simple matter, she began. We have a blood relative with a legal claim, and we have a non-relative who has stepped forward after a traumatic event. The law gives weight to both. Every breath in the room seemed to pause. She spoke about safety, about history, about the duty of the court to protect children, not adults' pride. She referenced Nico's testimony, his clear fear of going back with Carl, the documented pattern of absence. She noted Derek's past mistakes at the factory but also the concrete steps he had begun to take to correct them. This court is not in the business of handing out public relations wins, she said. We are here to give a child the best chance at a stable, caring home. Then came the line that changed everything. For now, I am granting Mr. Cole temporary full guardianship of Nico, with a clear path to adoption if conditions continue to be met. Supervision and follow-up will be ongoing. The uncle's claim will be investigated further, but the child will not be moved against his stated wishes at this time. Nico's shoulders sagged as if somebody had taken a weight off his chest. Tears slid down his face, quiet and steady. Lily threw her arms around him, nearly knocking into his bandaged side before catching herself. You're coming home with us, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. My hero. This time, the word hero did not feel like a headline. It felt like a nickname between siblings. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed again. Reporters shouted questions. Derek ignored them. Harper met him at the bottom of the steps. He pulled her into a hug that was long and tight, his face pressed near her temple. For a second, his lips almost brushed her skin. He pulled back before they crossed that line, not out of lack of feeling, but out of respect for the fragile new bond they were carrying out of that building. Carl stormed past, jaw clenched, muttering about appeals and unfair systems. But even he could not change the fact that, for now, the law had sided with what Nico said with both words and shaking hands, I feel safe with them. That evening, Derek drove Nico and Lily to the loft. The elevator ride felt strangely silent. When Nico stepped into the spare room Derek had turned into his, he stopped in the doorway. There was a bed with clean sheets, a small dresser, a lamp on the nightstand, even a hook for his hoodie. Closet doors stood open, waiting for clothes that were not yet there. I don't know how to sleep when I'm not listening for danger, he said softly. Derek stood in the hall and answered, that's okay. We'll learn together. Weeks passed. The limp in Nico's step eased, though some days were harder than others. Physical therapy hurt, but he pushed through it with a grim little smile. At the loft's kitchen table, 3 plates became the default instead of 2. Lily argued with him over which show to watch, who got the last slice of pizza, and whose turn it was to walk down to get the mail. It was loud, chaotic, and, for Nico, almost unreal. He had to unlearn habits built up over years. The first few nights, he slept with his shoes by his pillow and his backpack under the bed, just in case he had to leave in a hurry. Slowly, as the days stacked on without anyone kicking him out, the shoes moved to the floor, the backpack into the closet. One morning, Lily found him standing in front of the dresser, touching the handle of a drawer that was finally full of his own clothes. Looks good on you, she said, grinning. Being a regular kid. Derek fought battles outside the loft too. At the factory, he ordered full safety inspections, no shortcuts. Machines were upgraded, training improved. He named a new program after the former employee who had become the shooter, not to honor the act of violence, but to mark a turning point. We are done choosing the easy way if it means someone else pays the price, he told his staff. It was not about wiping the slate clean. It was about refusing to add more harm to it. At home, he learned how to live with 2 kids who both carried different kinds of pain. Some nights, Lily woke from nightmares of the gun pointed at her chest. Other nights, Nico woke in a cold sweat, heart racing, convinced he had heard someone breaking in. On those nights, Derek sat in the hallway between their rooms, back against the wall, talking to them through cracked doors until their breathing evened out. He was not a perfect father. He raised his voice sometimes. He got tired. But he stayed. One quiet evening, Harper showed up with takeout bags in both hands. "I heard there's a house here that doesn't know how to cook anything but frozen waffles," she joked. Lily rolled her eyes and dragged Nico off to set up a movie, leaving the adults in the small kitchen. Derek and Harper moved around each other, unpacking food, their shoulders brushing now and then. The touches no longer felt accidental. They felt like a language both were slowly learning. After the kids fell asleep on the couch, Harper and Derek stepped out onto the balcony. The city spread out below them, lights blinking in the damp air. They sat side by side, knees almost touching, sharing stories they had not told in court or in the hospital. About her long shifts and why she never had kids of her own. About his guilt and how he had convinced himself that keeping his world small was safer for everyone. Silence settled between them, not awkward but full. Then, finally, their hands found each other on the cool metal rail. Fingers intertwined. No big speech. No grand promise. Just a simple, steady contact that said, "We are still here." From his bedroom, Nico watched the faint glow of the balcony through a crack in his curtain. He lay back and thought about the alley in Portland where he had slept under a tarp, certain that his story would end as just another name nobody remembered. Now he had something that scared him more than bullets ever did, the chance that people might actually stay, that they might miss him if he was gone. He reached for the small key that hung on a cord around his neck. Derek had given it to him on the day the last bandage came off his leg. "This is for the front door," Derek had said. "Your door too now." Nico turned it over in his hand, metal warm from his skin. "Sometimes family isn't the ones who share your blood," he murmured into the dark. "It's the ones who show up when you're bleeding, and don't leave." With that, he slid the key under his pillow, turned off the light, and let his eyes close, not because he trusted the night, but because he was starting to trust the people waiting for him in the morning. Now, let me ask you, if you were Derek, would you have opened your door this wide? If you were Nico, would you have trusted it enough to walk through? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in their place. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that remind you how powerful real love and real choices can be.